Dear listeners, I have so much to tell you, and I often don't know where to start. It seems the world doesn't want to admit that sometimes we make mistakes and that sometimes the wrong person gets punished for something they didn't do. Not all of us have been personally affected, but many of us have been impacted by this reality. And I feel like it's my responsibility to share these stories with you and to tell you what I've learned about wrongful convictions. So, I'd like to welcome Mark back to join us again this week so he can continue telling us about this fabulous opportunity that the state of Illinois has implemented as part of the training for all new police recruits. So, last time, Mark, you were telling us about where this idea came from. So, can you just remind us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me back. So this project got started back, 2016. I was telling you earlier about my mentor, my longtime friend, a guy named Mike Schlosser, and Mike had been getting his master's degree in legal studies at the University of Illinois Springfield, which is where the Illinois Innocence Project is based. And as a part of that master's program, he took a class on wrongful convictions taught by a woman named Professor Gwendolyn Jordan. And so Mike's eyes were opened to this issue. And again, Mike was a career law enforcement officer, had no idea that this was as big of an issue as it is. And so he sat in this class and learned about it. And he said, this is something that my recruits, because again, he's the director of a police training institute, an academy in Illinois. And he said, this is something that my police officers need to hear about. They need to have a better understanding of this. And so he got together with Gwen Jordan and Larry Golden, who was the founding director of the Illinois Innocence Project, and John Hanlon, who at the time was the executive director of the Illinois Innocence Project. And so the four of them all got together and started talking about this. And John Hanlon always gives credit also to Barry Scheck from the National Innocence Project, and because he remembered being and it was somewhere in the Northwest. I can't remember if it was Washington or Oregon, somewhere out there. They were at a National Innocence Conference, and they had a police chief. I think he was from Maryland. He came out and talked about how police officers need to be trained on this issue. And so this was back in like 2012 that John had first heard this idea. Fast forward 2016, now he has a director of an academy sitting in his office trying to figure out a way to bring this to them. And so they came up with a plan that, just a couple of times a year, they would come over to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign and share with the recruits at the academy the issue of wrongful conviction. And so that's how it started, was just a couple of times a year they would go over as an elective class, and they would educate whatever recruits happened to be in training at the time. And so they would learn about that. And so that went on again for several years. And they, at a certain point, the Training and Standards Board, one of the deputy directors came over and happened to sit in on that class and said, "Well, this needs to be at every academy." And so then that kind of then kicked that ball down, got it started rolling. And so then in 2022, they said, hey, we're going to make this mandatory that starting in 2023, that every recruit in the police officer in the state, where there's 8 academies in the state of Illinois that certify full-time police officers as new police officers. And they said, we want this in every class starting 2023. And so in March of 2023, we kicked off at the Police Training Institute, which is, again, where this all started at, but this was the first time that it was a mandated class. And so we came in and we taught the first class there, and we've been rolling ever since. We've been in all 8 full-time academies. There's 4 part-time academies as well that we've been in over the last 2 years, and trained over 4,000, almost 5,000 police officers now, to date, at all 8 academies. And, we're just going to keep going. That's the goal, is to continue on. I've got classes. Actually, next week I'll be traveling quite a bit, doing some classes up in the Chicago area. And, But the goal is to get this not just to the recruits. And I'll share this story with you as well.
Of
We
course.
were teaching at one of the academies, and an instructor sat in from the academy. From time to time, either a director or an instructor from the academy will sit in, because they'll be like, "What's this class all about?" And
Sure.
kudos to them for having an open mind and being open minded to come in and sit in a class that they know nothing about. But they'll sit in. And so this academy instructor came up to me after the class. And he said, "This is one of the most powerful classes I've ever sat in." And, what an honor it was to sit there. And I said, "Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that." And, he had over 20 years of law enforcement experience. And he says, "I got to tell you, though, I think you're missing the mark here." And I said, "Oh, how's
Oh,
that?" And he says, "Well," he said, "you're teaching these kids, right?" Now, those are his words, not mine. But he said, "You're teaching these kids, and, they're brand new. They're not going to be doing anything for the next couple of years." He said, "Yeah, I think you're missing the mark, because you need to be bringing this class to experienced law enforcement officers, the guys and gals that have 5, 10, 15, 20 years on, because that's how the system is going to change. And we have to get more education out there about this topic." And I agree with him. I agree that this needs to be out to experienced police officers. But I said, where I disagree with you is that these kids aren't going to do anything for the next couple of years. They're going to be in patrol divisions. They're going to be with a field training officer. They're going to be some of the first people to respond to scenes. But not only that, the bigger picture, right, is we're not going to change the system overnight. This is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
sure.
And so the illustration that I gave him, and is, look, if you're going to build a house, right, and you want that house to stand strong for the next 30 years, like, where do you start at? Do you start at the roof? Do you start the windows and the walls? No, you start at the foundation,
Foundation.
right? And so if we can build a solid foundation early on with these young new police officers that are open-minded and wanting to learn as much as they can, then why not start there? Build that solid foundation, because they're going to be the faces of this criminal justice system for the next 30 years. That's the average career, anywhere from 20 to 30 years for police here in Illinois and across the United States. And I said, so why not start with that strong foundation? And then, yeah,
So
we
true.
want to get this expanded out. And in fact, that's one of my goals for this year. Is in Illinois, we have what are called mobile team units, and they are responsible for the continuing education of police officers
Okay.
in the state of Illinois. So that will be the experienced ones that are coming in to get their continuing ed credits. And so my goal is to get into, there's 16 of those MTUs across the state. And if I can get into a few of those this year and start training experienced law enforcement, great. We've had some success already out of state. We've gone down to Texas a couple different times
Oh, great.
and trained experienced law enforcement at the Center of American International Law. Fantastic place. If you guys ever get a chance to go down and check them out, they have conferences all year round, and they've put together some really good conferences. But they do one on actual innocence every year, and
Okay.
it's an excellent conference. But anyway, so there's experienced law enforcement. My brothers and sisters are open-minded to this issue. I know sometimes it feels like in the innocence community, I've had long conversations with my attorneys that the attorneys that work for us, sometimes it feels like they're slamming their heads against the wall because people just don't want to listen. It's because they haven't been educated, and they don't understand that this is a bigger issue than what their understanding of it is. And so their first instinct is to think that people are pointing fingers at them and attacking their investigations. And we're always very quick in our classes to point, we're not pointing fingers at anybody. We're simply pointing out what are, what is the issue, right? We identify the issue. This is something we didn't talk about the last time, but really what the class is identifying, making people aware of the stats and the facts about wrongful conviction. But then that's the first hour. It's a 4-hour class.
Right.
The next 3 hours are going through the common contributing factors that lead to wrongful convictions and giving actual case studies of real people whose lives have been changed because of those contributing factors. And so we really want to educate and make our officers not only aware, but train them in ways to avoid, right? That's where the avoidance piece of the wrongful conviction awareness and avoidance training program, the avoidance piece is giving them best practices of things that they can do that maybe they're not even considering at this point, that can really change, the likelihood of getting a wrongful conviction. And if we can just adopt some simple things like, again, the way we interview and interrogate people, the use of deception in our interviews and interrogations, or what I would prefer, no deception, right? Not using deception. But thinking about the way that you do your lineups, thinking about questions that you can ask of the forensics experts that come in on as a part of your case, and not being afraid to ask the man or the woman in the nice suit with a bunch of letters after their names questions about why they are coming to form the opinions that they have. So if we can just give them some best practices and educate them, I think we're going to start to see more collaboration between law enforcement and innocence work, which is ultimately my goal, is to build that bridge between the innocence lawyers that are out there trying to defend their clients and help them to the best of their abilities, and law enforcement who wants to do a good job and wants to make sure that the right person is in prison or jail or is held accountable for whatever they have done, and not an innocent person being held accountable for something they didn't do.
So I agree with you 100%. So this last point that you're talking about, just with training the new recruits as opposed to the veteran officers, at what stage in their training are they receiving this course that you're offering?
It varies from academy to academy. Sometimes uh, one academy we went to, literally the recruits were in week one, day 3 of their training,
Wow.
right? And so they got it right from the start. And then other academies have been the last week of their training, and they're getting ready to graduate the following week. We don't tell them where to put us in, because to me it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're getting the training, if they get it week one, day 3, great. That's going to carry through, and they're going to think about this every class that they have from that point on through the academy. If they get it the last week that they're there, it's going to carry with them right to the field as soon as they graduate. It's going to be fresh in their mind. So to me, it doesn't really matter where it happens, as long as it's happening. And again, we've been in every academy across the state now. So yeah, it varies from academy to academy.
And forgive me because I am not an officer. I haven't gone through this training. Um, is Are things like interrogation tactics or taking witness statements, is that stuff that you get in your initial training phase, or is that stuff that you pick up later in your career?
No, it's absolutely a piece of the academy experience. Will certainly be things like interview and interrogation, crime scene investigation. But keep in mind, they have a limited amount of time that they're with those recruits. And so they have to cram as much as they can in there, along with all of the other requirements, right? Defensive tactics, firearms,
Sure.
vehicle pursuits, driving, traffic law, criminal law. So there's a ton in Illinois. The standard is 16 weeks. Um, and some of the academies go a little longer than that, but the minimum standard is 16 weeks. So if you think about the amount of information, I mean, it literally is, putting your mouth up to the faucet and turning it on full blast and hoping that you can swallow everything that they give you. But it's,
100%.
yeah,
But I think that makes your course all that much more important because even if they're being trained on interrogation tactics or, taking witness statements and that kind of stuff, they're not going to get all the different angles in this 16 weeks. So, what you're giving is a really great complementary piece to these new recruits to work into the other training that they're receiving, right? Like, this is how I'm seeing it from an outsider's
yeah, no,
perspective,
I
anyhow.
think you're spot on. Yeah, it is definitely a supplement, right, to all of the other training, and goes hand in hand with the majority of it.
Yeah, I think it's so great. So you say you have reached over 4,000, almost
Yeah, almost
5,000
5,000
vets.
now.
So over 5,000 now. Wow.
Almost 5,000. We're not there yet. I
Almost.
think last I checked, we were at like 4,700, something like that. So
Wow.
almost
Okay,
5.
so like a couple more sessions and you'll be at 5,000. That's amazing. Um, so how, so presumably this is being seen as a successful project. How do you measure success?
There's the $1 million question. In fact, I was just talking to my director, Stephanie Campbell. She's the director of the Illinois Innocence Project. And we just had this conversation the other day
Ah,
because it's a question that we get asked a lot, right? Is how do we measure success? I don't know that you'll ever be able to quantify how this project has impacted the criminal justice
sure.
system, has impacted wrongful conviction. Um, because number one, we have no idea how many innocent people are sitting in prison right now. We have some good
Absolutely.
estimates. We have some good guesses based off of science, but we have no idea because if we knew they were innocent, well, presumably they wouldn't be in prison, right? And,
True.
and so you'd like to think. And so, we have no idea how many innocent people are there right now. um, but and then going forward, how will this class impact wrongful conviction and change the way officers do things? And how do you measure that? I don't
Yep.
have any idea.
Yep.
And
That's a
I
great
don't
point.
know that it can be again quantified. Right now, we are doing a research study. We have since day one. So March 2023, we started a research project. We hired two really great researchers out of the University of Illinois Springfield, Dr. AJ Simmons and Dr. Nick Waterbury, fantastic researchers, and they've been conducting studies with every class. We do a pre-course survey that measures the students' understanding of the issue. Before the class, we do a post-course survey to understand how this course has changed their thoughts and their mindsets. Then we do a follow-up 3-month and 6-month survey just to see, hey, now that you're out in the field, how is this changing anything that you're doing? And so we've been gathering that data for the last 2 years. Overwhelmingly successful program from a student standpoint. I mean, we're averaging 4.9 out of a 5-point scale on all of our ratings for the most part.
Wow. That's
So
great.
it's definitely opening minds, it's opening hearts, it's changing minds about this issue. But how do you ultimately, the goal of this program is to eliminate wrongful convictions. And as my cohorts have told me, like, Mark, I don't know that you ever can. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
that, because as you pointed out, it's a human system, right?
That's
Where
it.
human beings are involved, we're fallible, we make mistakes, we have issues. So are we ever going to eliminate it? My hope is yes, but I don't know that we'll ever be able to measure that success on this class. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's no, that is 100% exactly probably what I would have replied. So yes, it makes sense. I also think that looking at it that, yeah, we would love to get rid of wrongful convictions. Again, not to be super pessimist, but I don't think that we ever will. And I think the perhaps I don't want to say greater goal, but the more attainable or realistic goal is that yes, we're going to make mistakes. And so when they happen, let's own them. Let's not continue to say, no, that is impossible. And we did everything right. And this person obviously did it because I think they did it. Right. And I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
that it's like the acknowledgement that, yes, it is possible that a mistake was made and let's look at it again. Where I find that, more people are aware that it's possible, but there aren't that many more people who are willing to act on that knowledge. Right. And so I hope that, training like this will help to bridge that gap. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the most frustrating things is I go back and look at these cases, that our attorneys are currently working on, or cases that they've been working on, some of them for, 10 years or more. And again, when they say, oh, it feels like I'm slamming my head against the wall, some of these police officers, some of the prosecutors that they're working with, it's not even their case. I mean, it's been decades ago. It's a new state's attorney's office that had nothing to do with the prior cases, and yet they refuse to, be open-minded enough to even take a look at it. And their just response is no. They got it right. My predecessor wasn't wrong. Or again, police officers, nope, nope. Those detectives, they were great detectives. They did a good job. Well,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with you, right? Let's just again be open-minded enough to say,
Yeah.
and this is again where I would be today if somebody said, Mark, we think you got it wrong. Tell me more. Why do you think we got it wrong? What evidence are you seeing? What information do you have? Because who knows, maybe they have new information that those previous detectives or prosecutors or whoever didn't have, and now we do. So let's take a look at it and see. And maybe at the end of the day, it's still that person. But what
Sure.
if you're open-minded enough to say, tell me more, and they bring you information that shows, hey, this person's actually innocent. And we've seen some examples over the years of police officers that have done just that, that they got new information. They said, hey, we need to look into this. They've gotten some pushback from, supervisors saying, hey, no, this was a good conviction. They're like, no, we think we need to look into this one. And guess what? They find out the person's actually innocent. And kudos to those officers for being willing to step out and say, nope, we're not perfect. Let's take a look. Let's see what they have and look into it more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see we're just about at time, but I would love to wrap this up just by asking you one final question. And just from your point of view, why is this program so important to you? Like, what does it mean to you personally?
Yeah. Well, again, it means everything to me because I've realized and recognized what a system that gets it wrong can do to somebody. You can't help but so our speakers bureau, we bring two exonerees to every class that we teach to share their stories. That was one of the first things that when I finally got hired and started doing this full time. And I said, hey, can I make some changes? And they're like, yeah, what do you think needs to be changed? I said, well, let's stop bringing one exoneree. I want to bring two to every class that I teach, because that's what changes the hearts and minds, right? Is you can
Sure.
listen to me, you can listen to an attorney share stats and facts and numbers with you all day long, but until you see that person and realize that this is a human being, this is somebody's, son or daughter, this is somebody's mom or dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, whatever the case may be, this is a human being, right? And their life has been changed forever because of a system that we represent. And, so why does this mean so much to me? Because we have 25 exonerees on our speakers bureau whose lives were changed forever because of the system that I represented. And I don't ever want that to happen to another human being. If there's anything that I can do, and again, I go back to how I would watch the news or I would read the newspaper and say, oh, that's terrible. When I sat in that class and listened to Christine share her story, and I said, not only is it terrible, but what am I doing to change it? What am I doing to make this system better? And so that's what I'm doing. Is I'm literally going anywhere and everywhere I can and talking to anybody and anyone that will listen to me about this issue, not to point fingers, not to say you did this wrong, you need to fix this. That's not the issue. The issue is I want you to know, I want you to be aware of the fact that wrongful convictions exist and that there are innocent men and women sitting in prison right now who don't deserve to be there, who were pulled away from their families, from their communities, from their jobs, and are suffering an injustice that should never be done. And so we have to change the system. We have to do better, and we should want to do better. At the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing, and that's the truth. And so we have to do a better job of obtaining the truth and identifying the real perpetrators that are out there, and not the innocent person that did nothing wrong.
That's amazing and such powerful words to end on. So, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing with us about this really innovative project that's going on in the state of Illinois. And, hopefully we can bring something like this to Canada and to other states. And, just the more people we can make aware, I think the better off we all are. Right.
Yeah,
So,
spot
thank
on.
you, Mark.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
It's been
so
an
much.
absolute honor. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you and your listeners, and hopefully bring some more enlightenment to the topic.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
And while today's letter may have piqued your interest, this is only part of the story. There's still so much more to tell. The effects of wrongful convictions are far reaching. They touch us all. I'll write to you again soon as I continue my conversations with those whose lives have been impacted by a wrongful conviction. But until then, I remain wrongfully yours. If you have something that you want to talk about with me, or even if you want to just send me some words of encouragement, you can drop me a line at wrongfullyyourspodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out my website, kellylozon.ca, for more information about me and the kinds of things that I do. And so, if you were touched by this episode, please consider sharing it with others, liking and following the podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss what comes next. And as always, thank you for listening to Wrongfully Yours, where we believe that telling these stories is the first step towards preventing the next injustice. And until next time, stay curious, stay hopeful, and keep fighting for justice.